Great. Thank you for doing that. And thank you for attending Griffin's Cannabis Online Workshop. A word of thanks to our sponsors. They've helped make this educational series everything that it has become. It's really proving out to be a very, very valuable series, and we thank them immensely for what they've contributed to this. I'd like to read their names off. Grodan, the folks at Premier who give us ProMix, DPH Biologicals, Verano 365, and 10X. As I mentioned, our 5-part series connects with improving efficiency and profitability in cannabis cultivation. Our goal for today's webinar and the entire series has been that you learn about innovations and strategies that you can implement immediately or in the near term that can help move the needle for you and your team. Today's first presentation is by Brett Krosner, DRAM's Northeast Technical Rep, and he'll be presenting on No More Downtime. A very, very proactive look at how to keep your DRAM equipment, notably your sprayers, performing at peak efficiency. The second presentation is by Justin Sorensen, Dilution Solutions National Technical Sales Representative on the CEA side of things. Your injector is a key part of your crop protection and nutrition strategy, and he too will be speaking about some very, very proactive and simple maintenance actions that can help keep that piece of equipment performing and reliable. I'm sure you'll find both presentations to be very informative. As an attendee, you'll be receiving a link to this recording. Please feel free to enter questions into the chat. I'll be monitoring those throughout the presentations. Brett, the screen is yours. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Greg, and thank you everyone for joining and inviting DRAM to be a part of this. It's a great cause and look forward to working with everyone. So the first segment is No More Downtime, and what we're going to be looking at is efficient ways and techniques to keep your machines running properly or to help troubleshoot some commonly, not issues, but commonly worn parts and pieces to your DRAM sprayers. So let's jump a little bit back to the basics. So DRAM chemical application equipment are meant to apply insecticides, fungicides, fertilizers, disinfectants. But with that said, some equipment might have some different components or modification to allow the use of corrosive materials. More specifically, like a xeritol, sandate type of solution or of the like. So you might see item codes or models that have an SS or a CRF within the model. SS would stand for stainless steel, and CRF would stand for corrosion resistant fittings, more specifically on our Hydra line. The stainless steel would be more specific to our autofogs in regards to the nozzle, and then all the plumbing fittings on the Hydra would be replaced from brass to stainless steel on the CRF models. We highly recommend getting these within a cannabis facility. A lot of times xeritol or the like is used, whether it be for disinfection or for foliar use. So keeping an eye on those, making sure that you are getting quoted the right equipment or that you're buying the right equipment is very important. And to prevent any kind of wear or clogging, we really want to make sure that we are cleaning our nozzles, filters, and paying attention to plumbing. And we obviously recommend the proper cleaning out of equipment. A very common theme that I'm going to hit on almost every slide is rinsing and flushing of equipment upon finishing or as soon as you possibly can. More specifically with the MSO, Hydra, and Cold Fogger, they all utilize a larger tank, whether it be 20 gallon, 50 gallon, or 100 gallon solution tank. So the MSO and Hydra are our hydraulic sprayer line, and our cold fogger is a low volume applicator, but utilizes a similar tank. Rinsing and flushing is key to just about everything down the line in regards to upkeep and parts working as they should, from the tank itself to your filters to your pump to your motor to your hose to your gun. They all kind of fall all back on rinsing and flushing your equipment. Best way to do this is, as you're done applicating, drain and properly disposing of any remaining solution. Warm water always works best when you're rinsing, helps dilute it a little bit quicker. If that is not available to you, try to avoid super cold water. Rinsing the tank a couple more times to fully eliminate any residue. A triple rinse is always recommended. And if you do have oily residue or buildup on the tank, we want to make sure that we're using a tank cleaner. And if that is the case, that we want to flush that out, even more well. One thing that we don't usually think about is how much volume actually fits within the sprayer hose. So we want to make sure that we are, fully rinsing the length of the hose out 3 to 5 times the volume it holds. So below is kind of a snapshot of what those numbers might be depending on your hose length. So we want to make sure that, if you have a 250-foot hose, that we are at least flushing, 3 to 5 times the volume, which is a gallon and a half. Now, on the smaller hoses and the smaller amounts of gallon, that might not be enough solution to fully prime your pump. So we want to have at a minimum reach this amount, and then you want to increase water to efficiently prime your pump. So on the gun aspect, we want to make sure we also remember to flush your gun. So making sure that your gun is attached, running solution or running water through it. On the cold fogger specifically, we have an attachment that can kind of speed up that process. So you want to first reverse the gun tip on the cold fogger, flush out the tip, kind of opens up backwards, and then you can swap out into the draining nozzle to more quickly purge out the hose into the tank. And this is just a quick connect that attaches right to your hose. Along the lines of the MSO Hydra and cold fogger, they both have their own respective filtering. So on all of these machines, there is an inline suction filter that has a screen within it. We want to make sure we're always checking that screen. So unscrewing the cap of the body. The MSO and cold fogger, this is located either at the bottom of the tank or on the backside. And on the Hydra, it is always located on the backside. It is just a larger body. So we are going to unscrew, clean out the screen. We're going to inspect the screen for any rips, tears, or clogging. And then always on the edge of the cap, there is a gasket. We want to make sure we're always having eyes on that gasket to make sure we're not seeing any fraying or dry rotting or missing. We want to make sure that that gasket is in good shape, because that is keeping the suction within the line and will help the pump not only prime, but perform properly. With the cold fogger, a lot of people don't realize this, there is a filter within the gun body. On more recent guns on the cold fogger, this is in the handle of the gun. So the handle needs to be unscrewed from the top of the gun. And this filter, it's a 200 mesh filter, is within that handle. This needs to be rinsed out just about every time you spray. More importantly, with anything thicker than a liquid, but definitely with any type of thicker material or wettable powders or anything like that, we always make sure we're checking this filter. The cleanliness of this filter is going to really affect particle sizing, also the cold fogger gun tip clogging. We want to make sure that we avoid that as much as possible. So this filter being cleaned is very important. Going to more specifics with the MSO, going back to that first slide, talking about rinsing and flushing. This can't be said enough. Rinsing and flushing and oil changes are going to be the two main things you can do with your machine to make sure it's always running properly. Thankfully, on the MSO, there is no oil. This is a self-lubricating pump. So we want to make sure that because of that if you're ever letting this machine sit for a long period of time, it's not a bad idea to periodically run some warm water or water through the pump just to keep all pump componentry lubricated. If it sits for a few months out of the year, or it gets put away for a little bit of time, or say you upgrade to a Hydra and you have this sitting around as a backup, it's not a bad idea to run water through it. O-rings and bushings can certainly start to dry out and have more of an issue upon pump startup again. With any equipment, storing in a temperature controlled environment, we really want to avoid any chance of freezing. If you don't have an option to store it in a warm environment, it might not be a bad idea to pop the pump off if it is going to be a long period of time. For example, if you're putting the Hydra or MSO away for a little while, making sure it's completely empty, and maybe you just pop the pump off and store that in a warm environment. I'm going to have a couple pictures on the next slides that's going to talk about the pressure regulator valve and valve seat. This is something you want to be aware of and checking, not super often, but often enough where if you see performance dips, it might be one of the first places you check. The inline suction strainer and gasket, we talked about that in the last slide. And then the gun tip is a key component to the performance of the gun. If you are experiencing heavy pressure upon gun trigger being pulled in and then it drops off, sometimes it can be related to the gun tip. So changing that orifice yearly might be a little too much, maybe once every 2 years. But if you see that performance dropping or pressure dipping and no other troubleshooting aspect is throwing a red flag, changing that gun orifice might be key. Things I like to keep on the shelf for the MSO: that nozzle tip. If you want to have one on the shelf, it's not a bad idea. And then the piston repair kit. So the piston repair kit has just about every component within the pump that would start to show wear or need to be replaced. So if you were to send the pump into DRAM for repair, usually those components are changed out, whether it be O-rings or gaskets or bushings. We want to make sure we're looking at all of that when we're talking about repairs.
Brett, before you move on, and this is a good slide, but before you move on to that, if you could backtrack, I think I missed a question that came in through the Q&A. And if you go one back, yeah, no, I'm wondering if maybe I missed it 2 slides ago. It says what diameter hose are you referring to? So with regards to the lengths that you gave, is that all a set diameter? I think I'm capturing the question as it's asked.
Okay, so the 100 foot and the 150 foot is a 1/4 inch diameter.
Okay.
And anything above a 200 is actually a 3/8 diameter.
Okay.
So the top two are 1/4 inch and the bottom 3 here are 3/8. So a little bit larger for the volume.
Great. Excellent. I bet you that answers the question. If it doesn't, if you could please hit us back on the chat, and we'll try to refine that.
Okay. Good question. In regards to MSO troubleshooting and some common components that can wear if not properly flushed and taken care of, the pressure regulator section, I mean, that's obviously regulating the pressure. So here's the body. This example was some heavy xeritol use, and the customer admittedly claimed to not flushing out too often. So within this, we do have a brass piece of body here. There is a little lip here that you can see that helps keep all the components in place without much movement. On the one that was sent in, there is no more lip. That is completely flush, and components were kind of moving around there freely, which caused some pressure issues. So, keeping an eye on this body whenever you're looking at it is very good to make sure that you do still have this lip and those components are stayed tight. On older MSOs, if you have one from over a year ago, the valve and the pressure regulator used to be made of ceramic. The problem with the ceramic is it is a little bit coarse, and the design made it spin within the body, which caused some uneven wear of the valve seat. So if you do have some pressure issues in your MSO, it's not a bad idea to unscrew the pressure regulator body from your pump. It's right on top of the pump. It unscrews. When you do unscrew it, tilt it and hold the seat in place. You don't want to lift this up straight up and have all these components fall out. We want to make sure that we are always replacing the ceramic one with the stainless steel replacement. As you can see, the stainless steel after the same amount of time is not showing any type of wear, whereas the ceramic is really digging into that seat, which is also made of stainless steel. So if you are experiencing pressure issues, this might be one of the first places to check. And the piston U packing is another common wear point on the MSO if it's used very often. You would see this being an issue with either pressure loss or with leaking water out of the pump. So there's a weep hole at the bottom of the pump. It's supposed to be there. If water is leaking out of there, this could be a culprit. As you can see, the one on the left-hand side is a lot thinner. This is the same exact U packing or gasket, but over time it will expand. So we want to make sure that we are keeping an eye on that anytime we open up the pump. In regards to anytime you do open up the pump on any machine, it's always good to have O-rings readily available, because you want to make sure that you are checking the quality of the O-ring. If it's fraying or dry rotted, go ahead and replace them at that time. Otherwise, they will fail quicker once you put the pump back together. And last part about the MSO, if you are still experiencing pressure issues, within this body here lies the suction valve and valve seat. So this piece can see a little bit, the edge right there, that is this piece right here. On the other side of this, there's a little nut that can be visible or accessed if this black hose is removed. And so water or solution is being sucked through the suction line into this pump body. If this suction hose is taken off, you want to take a flathead or Phillips head screwdriver and put it in there and make sure that right here separates. You'll be able to feel it. There's a little spring in there. As you push up against it, you'll feel it either freely moving or it'll feel stuck. If it feels stuck, that means this is not opening right here. And we will make sure we press against that a little more firmly until it releases, and then run some warm water through there and really get this cleaned up. Now, this is an example of one that was not flushed out, and we have a lot of sticky chemical residue still left on the valve. And when that sticks together, you're not going to get great pressure. Moving on to the Hydra, going back to the same thing, rinsing and flushing, going back to that, hose sizing chart, no volume, rinsing out the tank is very important. The Hydra does have oil. We want to make sure that we change out the oil for a break-in period of about 50 hours. So looking at how often you're spraying and dividing that out, make sure you do a 50-hour oil change initially. When you refill it, from then on, you can change oil every 1 to 2 months, depending on use. If this is an everyday machine, you might want to be replacing the oil every month. When you do that, always be aware of the red breather cap up top here. So this is made of plastic. It is by design. It is a breather cap, so it helps the pump regulate pressure properly within that crankcase. We want to make sure that when you remove that, you be very careful you don't crack it, and then when you tighten it, just hand tight is plenty. You do not need to wrench it down fully. It can be hand tightened, and if absolutely necessary, maybe a small 1/8 turn with a crescent wrench or monkey wrench. Just be very careful with it. We never want to replace that with a plug. Cleaning the inline suction strainer and gasket, as we talked about in one of the first slides. The nozzle tip, replacing that once or twice a year. That tip will wear over time. So if you do start seeing particle size changes or performance issues, the nozzle tip is recommended to be changed. We do have a newer, this is about 3 months old, repair video on our website. This QR code will bring you directly to the YouTube link. This actually goes into how to replace most components of the pump, more specifically the oil seals and some of the valve assembly parts. What to keep on the shelf, nozzle tip, like we said, that red oil cap. We do have a pump and a valve rebuild kit. The pump rebuild kit comes with the valve portion of it, so you can just have that on the shelf. But that will come with all seals, gaskets, O-rings, everything that's needed on a maintenance level basis. Again, pumps can always be sent into DRAM for replacement, but if you do plan on doing this yourself, the video is very helpful, and having that kit on hand is definitely helpful. Picture to the left is the rebuild kit. Again, it comes with all U-packings, gaskets, seals, valve components, O-rings, etc. So even if you only need one or two parts or pieces of this, it's good to have it on the shelf. To the right is a image of inside the crankcase where the oil seals sit. The oil seal is a fairly common maintenance item, whether it be getting solution into the oil or oil leaking out of the bottom of the crankcase. These need to be set deep within the crankshaft, which is very hard to do without taking the crankshaft out. So most people were taking the manifold off and using a screwdriver or something to pry these out. You will damage the housing or the rod, which if you do score one of those, that seal will never seal properly again. So we will make sure that we are watching that video or sending the pump into us to do this part, as it is more intensive than just popping it in and out. Yes.
Brett, can you go back to that and just, I want to make sure that the audience understands, is there either a tool, if someone wants to do this on their own, is there either a preferred tool or a custom tool? And if there is damage, is that seal something that's part of the kit?
Yeah, good question. So basic tools can be used. In the video kind of outlines which tools are needed, sizes of tools, and techniques of using those tools. So usually what's in your toolbox usually can do the trick here. In terms of the oil seals, these can be replaced. They are within this kit. You can see them right down here. These can be replaced, but the video does outline the tools and how to take these out without damaging it.
Great, thanks.
This manifold right here is attached to where the oil seals sit. The oil seals sit right back in here. So all these components are included in that rebuild kit, just to eliminate any need for something that might be missing. That's why kits are sometimes always good, to make sure you have all parts and pieces. When you do take these things apart, checking the quality of the U-packing, the O-rings, the adapters. To the right is the adapter that sits within the manifold, and on the other side on the cylinder. As you can see, again, this is some Xeritol damage or the like, where this lip right here is supposed to be right here. And now we do not have that at all. Trying to erase that. There you go. We want to make sure that flushing is a high priority when you are spraying. So this could be avoided if flushing was done properly each time. So, but again, checking the quality of these adapters when you do take this pump apart is very key, that you don't put it back together like this, because you'll continue to have problems, whether it be leaking or getting solution into the oil. Jumping to cold fogger, we are getting tight on time, so I'll try to be efficient here. Going back to the rinse and flushing after every use. The agitation pump is very important. There is an agitation pump on this machine. We want to make sure that is on when you're filling the machine under normal mixing circumstances, but also when we are, priming the pump, because that does provide the prime, and when we're cleaning out, we want to make sure it's always used. Same time frames on the oil changes, 50 hours for the break-in, and then we want to do this monthly if the machine's used every day, or every couple of months if it is used, 2 to 3 times a week. Avoiding freezing is always recommended, and cleaning that suction strainer and gasket. What I keep on the shelf is the gun filter and the gun tip. The gun tip should last quite a while, but if you are using Xeritol type solutions over time, things will start to break down. So keep an eye on the gun tip, but that filter, just having one available in case one is extremely gunked up and you're tight on time, or someone forgot to clean it and now you have a gun or a filter that's full of muck. We want to make sure that we can swap them pretty easily. The next component on the cold fogger that could cause issue is the unloader valve. So here's an example of a operator kind of messing with pressures on the cold fogger and allowing Xeritol to sit in there for a longer period of time. Again, we keep going back to the use of Xeritol and not flushing, but we do start seeing breakdown of components if that does happen. So this is the unloader valve, this cross piece here. And this red casing here can be used to adjust pressure, but the pressure is factory set. This does not need to be touched. If you own a cold fogger and you don't want your employees or applicators messing with this, this red cap can just be pulled off, just slides right off. Users might be less inclined to turn something if all you see is this bottom part here. But these are factory set. They don't need to be adjusted. Keeping them as is and flushing properly will help avoid this problem of deterioration. If you are having pressure issues with your cold fogger, this could be one of them. Hot seals, the cold fogger is a 3000 PSI pump, so it utilizes Viton seals within the pump. If they go bad, or if things aren't rinsed and it sits with the solution too long, they can start to fail. It's a very expensive repair, so flushing is definitely very important on the cold fogger. Make sure nothing is staying within that pump. So the hot seal kit and the unloader valve are probably the two most commonly run into issues on the cold fogger. And next, but certainly not least, and it's probably one of our most common items within cannabis facilities, whether it be greenhouse or indoor, is the auto fog. With indoor cannabis facilities, we see a lot of them, more of the minis, which is on the left-hand side, or the SLVH or standard size, medium size on the right-hand side. These are very commonly used. Same thing with the hydraulic sprayers as with the foggers. We want to make sure that the tank is always clean and free of debris and any oily residue. Storing it in some kind of temperature controlled area. I see some people buy grill covers to throw over top of these to avoid getting dust on them, or any type of cover like that that might be insulated a little bit. Any of that does help. So the inline suction strainer, both models have one. The mini is located right inside the tank in the bottom of the suction line. It looks like a half moon strainer. Make sure that's clean and rinsed off after every use. And then the SLVH has it actually within the tank, so making sure that is also rinsed out after every use. And then the air filter is probably my number one maintenance item of really any sprayers that we have. It really dictates the longevity of the compressor used in autofogs and the performance. On the mini, it's located in the back, and on the SLVH and SLVH and LVH is located right behind the casing here. So we want to make sure we have one of those on the shelf and an annual maintenance kit, which comes with all O-rings, filters, strainers, that kind of thing. So like I said, here is your filter body housing. This has the filter within it. We want to make sure this is always clean and dry. So when you do rinse this out, make sure it fully dries before putting it back in. I recommend always having an extra one. That way the one you're cleaning goes on the shelf to dry and you pull the next one off and replace it right away. Sometimes if that does not happen and one is drying on the shelf, someone will either forget to put one in there in general, or they'll put a wet one in there, and you'll have some performance issues and cause the compressor to run hotter than it should. This is an oilless compressor, so we want to make sure it's running cool. This is an example in the middle of a body that is showing some cobwebs. So this person probably did not clean it every so often. So that one is actually the same as this one. So this is what happened when I took the cap off. We have a lot of chemical buildup matching where these holes are. There's not much airflow going through there. So what we want to look at is buildup of chemical, and then also chipping or deterioration of the foam filter. If you start seeing this, go ahead and replace it. But with how this builds up, we want to make sure that we are rinsing that pretty often. For products like Xerotol or anything that's very thin and liquid, this isn't as common of a buildup. But really any other chemical, if the filter is within the area that's being fogged, it will suck some of that up. The filter is there to catch it and to provide nice airflow within the compressor. If that is not cleaned, we look at what happens. And this is a case where someone was using a fertilizer or some kind of chemical, and they did not put their filter back in at all. So all that chemical was just being sucked right into the compressor, causing the piston area to be damaged, or not damaged, to be completely coated in chemical. And cleaning this could cause damage because we don't want to have any scoring on the surface. And then also on the valve plate side, we have a lot of buildup. This reed valve right here is a very thin valve that regulates the air within that compressor. We want to make sure this is always clean and dry. Otherwise, it can get very sticky or snap, in which case you will have very low pressure or no pressure at all. So we want to make sure we're looking at that. If everything is clean in here, it might be as simple as up top here, you have your relief valve. Sometimes that can get stuck open. So if you're having some pressure issues and you've done all the troubleshooting and can't figure it out, that is something to check, make sure that didn't get stuck open. But with the auto fog, we want to make sure that we're always cleaning out the nozzle, that we are back cleaning the suction tube, and then more importantly, the air filter. So,
Brett,
yes.
a pretty good question just came in. What kind of application of sprays would you use the cold fogger for compared to the Hydra?
So on the cold fogger, we are utilizing, it's a low volume applicator. It's more of a directed fog. So you can actually push a fog sized particle within a canopy. So if you're looking to utilize less water and have smaller particles for coverage, and potentially use a much quicker application method, the cold fogger can be used for a good amount of products. Now, the Hydra can use just about every product through it because it is a hydraulic sprayer using a little bit larger droplet size. But if you're looking to get more of a smaller particle, faster application, less water, more penetration into a canopy, utilizing smaller particles, the cold fogger can be used. The downside to the cold fogger is it does have that 200 mesh filter in the gun. So we don't want to use any really thick oils or anything like that, because not only does that go against some of the mode of action of that chemical, but you can clog that filter and gun tip very easily. So we want to make sure we're using very thin material through the cold fogger, but it is a great tool for fast application.
Great. Thank you.
To wrap it up, we touched on a lot, but there is still a lot to learn about troubleshooting. Majority of it is in our manuals. So visiting our website, almost every manual for each machine is on there. Usually the back has the troubleshooting tips. Utilizing our service team, we have a dedicated service team for sprayers, calling into our main office number and talking to someone through your issues. And then we also have a service request form on our website. If you're looking to send in your pump or a certain component of your machine, we can get that repaired and sent back out with a pretty quick turnaround time. We understand how important it is to have your sprayers up and running at all times. So we try to turn those around very quickly. I did relink the QR code for the Hydra repair video. If you did not get that, now's a good time to snap that. It is on our website under the Hydra section. So if you miss it, it is there. And then some contacts. I cover the Eastern US for commercial technical sales and support. You can always contact me with any of these questions too. And then Central US, we have Scott Sterling, who covers Central US. And then the Western US is right now not fulfilled. So Scott and I are splitting that.
Great. Brett, thank you. Appreciate it. I'm going to check in with Rebecca to see if anything else has come in through either the chat or the Q&A.
Okay.
All good. No other questions.
Okay, great. So regarding, you touched on it a little bit here at the very end, Brett, regarding service time and turnaround time. I know much of this presentation is about being proactive and understanding what it takes to utilize preventative maintenance, to know what you're looking for. But if the situation does arise where a grower has to send something into DRAM, what can be some of the typical turnaround times?
We like to get things turned around within a week. So if we get something in on a Monday or a Tuesday, we try to have it out the door before the weekend. We don't like to hold anything longer. Now, if it's a more extensive repair, like there's I mean, most things we have in stock on the shelf. A lot of our equipment is built in-house and designed in-house. So all those parts and pieces are usually readily available. The only time that could be an issue, I would say, is if there is some kind of shortage of a component and we get a repair in that time frame where we might be missing something. That's the only thing I can really think of where we couldn't get things turned around very quickly. But we want to get you back to spraying as soon as possible. So it's very quick.
Yeah. And so pretty typical of what a grower would see would be in most of the scenarios that you presented, would be a loss of pressure and a loss of performance. And that would kind of be the key or the clue that one of the things on one of the units that you've just described and presented here is starting to fail. Is that accurate?
Yeah. So I tried to pick out all the most commonly failed components or worn components. If you do start to see either particle sizes starting to get larger because the gun tip is worn, or you see leaking, or you see pressure loss or issues, a lot of those all kind of fall back to those specific pieces we talked about today. Most of those are ones that the customer can see, but it's really important to, when you're training your spray applicators, to let them know if you see any performance dipping or any pressure issues, to always reference some of those troubleshooting tips or to give us a call to talk through them, because any kind of pressure loss or issue, there's an underlying thing happening within that pump or valve. So we want to make sure that we get to the bottom of it.
Yeah. And one more question came in. Is there, can you scroll back to the slide that showed the filter in the, I believe it was the handle. It was one of the first slides. Yeah, that right there. So is that pretty clearly marked? I mean, basically it's probably a black screw tip that keeps that filter in place.
So on the cold fogger gun, this filter is located in the handle. The new guns, this is actually an old gun. The new guns are silver. So you would take the handguard off, you pull the handguard off of the handle, and then you unscrew the actual handle itself where your palm goes around, and inside that, excuse me, is the filter. And this one is obviously showing a lot of buildup. But this filter, unless you're using a Xeritol, something very, very thin, it should be checked after almost every application. It's key for pressure, for particle size, for the nozzle tip clogging, all that. It is a very important part. So removing the hose from the gun, pulling apart the handguard off the handle, and then unscrewing the handle from the gun base, and you will find this filter, and making sure that goes in pointy side towards the top of the gun when you replace it. Make sure it goes back in correctly. But yeah, that is a very important part.
Okay, great. Another question, which I'm betting connects with this. What do you recommend for maintenance and/or repair kits for the Hydra sprayer guns?
For the higher sprayer gun, all you really need is have a gun tip on hand. Unless there's physical damage to the orange cone or to some other component of the gun, just the gun tip itself. So not this orange cone, but there's actually a tip within that cone, which unscrews. That should be replaced at least once a year, if not twice a year. It unscrews. It's not a very expensive part, but it is very important to particle size and pressure.
Great. I think that wraps up all the questions. A ton of information, Brett, and I'm trying to connect with Justin to see if he is on yet. I don't believe that he is. I'm going to just check in if you could leave your last slide up. that would be great.
Yep.
Let me see if I can connect with him and get him set up for the second one. Rebecca, if you could keep an eye on the chat if anything comes in, and I will be right back with everybody.
I actually just saw Nick's question come through. Each piece of equipment has a blow up diagram of the guns, the pumps, assembly. All of that is in our manuals on the website. So you will see blow up portions of the guns, of the pumps, and all that. A good visual of the cold fogger gun is in the cold fogger manual. It shows exactly where that filter is and where it goes. Same thing with the Hydra pump or the MSO pump. You will see a very detailed blow up of each of those with part numbers.
I'm going to see if I can open up a microphone here. John has a question. Maybe you can do that, Rebecca?
Yeah, John, you should be all set to unmute yourself.
And John, if you can't, if you could type it into the chat, we still have a minute here. Justin is connecting right now. It looks like he's coming on. But I do want to get your question answered if you can't unmute. Okay, great. Yeah, I don't see that yet. John will get it answered. Absolutely. After the session, during the next session, but we'll get your question answered once we see what it is. With that, Brett, thank you. Very, very informative. I think the takeaway here is be prepared, be proactive, know what to look for, and certainly keep yourself running by employing and implementing some of the strategies that you shared with us today. So I appreciate you sharing the contact information there as well as the QR code. And thanks for presenting.
Yep. Thank you all. Appreciate you having us.
Yep. So our next speaker is Justin Sorensen. And Justin, if you can share your screen, we will roll right into your presentation.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay, sound check is good. We hear you loud and clear.
Perfect. All right, let me know here if everybody can see my screen. Should be up now.
It is coming through loud and clear. Yep, I can see it. I'm guessing that our audience can see it. And Justin, if you could tell us how to keep it clicking.
All right. Well, I appreciate everybody joining me today. One of the things with dosatrons that we don't always remember is how to keep them maintained or what levels of maintenance they actually require. So this is something that we put a lot of emphasis on, just being a mechanical device. And keeping your dosatron maintained is going to ultimately benefit your consistency with the unit, and it's going to provide you that reliable solution for your fertigation. And so what I'd like to do is kind of just recap a little bit about how the dosatron operates. That way, when we talk about maintenance of the dosatron, we know why certain things are maintained and why that is important. And so what our overall goal with dosatron is to have this productivity increased, whether that's through the elimination of hand mixing, or, you know, eliminating the human error that comes to a facility with hand mixing, and getting those consistent, repeatable results. And so when we talk about what we're using a dosatron for, we know that we're going to be injecting a number of different things into these units. So fertilizers, water treatment products, you know, pesticides, fungicides, compost teas, line cleaning solutions. So the list kind of goes on and on of what we actually put through these things. And so at the end of the day, those different inputs are going to affect the amount of maintenance that we're going to need to keep going on these units to keep those things consistent. So when we look at a dosatron, we see a lot of moving parts on the inside of this thing. You know, when that's installed in a facility, we hear it clicking, we hear it clacking, but we don't always get to see what actually is happening inside of that unit. And what we really have is very basic. It is a water-driven piston that's activated by water flow. In the top half of the unit here is where we see the piston, where we see the piston valves. And then if you look at the bottom of the unit, if we kind of imagine it as two parts, we have what we call our injection stem. And so when we break that in half, we've got our whole piston in the upper portion here. And in the lower portion, we've got a plunger that acts as a syringe pulling our solution up. We've got a check valve that's opening and closing, allowing solution up, but then not allowing it to be kicked back down into our stock tank. So there are quite a bit of seals and moving parts inside of these units that every time I hear a click or every time I hear a clack, I know that that thing is moving up and down, and in essence, it's wearing itself down. So that's where those parts are going to be that we need to keep maintained in order for us to keep these units running like they should be. We do see differences in the two different kind of units that we have. We have our traditional horticulture units, and then we also have our hydroponic units. And the differences, they're not, you know, great, but they are there. And that also leads to different types of maintenance that might need to be performed on the units. But this is more a great visual for everybody to kind of see what is the difference between my traditional hort unit and my hydroponic unit. The three big differences that we see is we've got a bypass unit or a bypass switch on the top of our hydroponic unit, allowing us to stall out a piston and turn it on and off. Why that's important is if we have a unit off for a lengthy period of time, we know that it's not wearing itself down because it's essentially not injecting, right? If that unit's always on, we know that it is always wearing itself, it's always working, which can either move forward your maintenance schedule or, you know, give you a little bit longer period of time with that injector. The unions are really important when it comes to maintenance on our hydro units. This allows us to pull a unit off and service that unit without disassembling a system or finding a way to get it out of where it is. With ease of use, you're a lot, you know, you could just undo a couple of unions and now you've got that unit off and you're able to really work with it. And then the scale. Scale doesn't play a big part in the maintenance, but it's just something I wanted to highlight for the group here as a difference between the two units. The series of injectors that we work with, we have high flow and low flow. These low flow units are the D14s. These part numbers that are on the units here and are very specific to the model, and then going to be very specific to the maintenance kits that you buy for that unit. So a D14 MZ2 seal kit is going to be specific to a D14 MZ2, whereas a D14 MZ3000 is going to be specific to that unit. That may seem like something that's just apparent, but it's a good thing to always, you know, cover that different units do take different maintenance kits. I wanted to highlight the new unit that we're going to see out there. And that is the D14MZ 1000, available in high flow and in low flow. This will be replacing our low flow D25 RE09. We are going to still carry all the maintenance kits, all the parts for that D25 RE09. So none of that stuff is going away. Just the full unit itself as a new unit will be kind of getting out of production and out of availability, being replaced by this. So no worry on the maintenance for the D25 RE09. That stuff's all still going to be available. Just as a kind of note here that we have this new unit that will be replacing that as a full model. We also want to highlight that a unit can be swapped over to a different unit at any time. This goes kind of along with maintenance in a sense. Just being aware that we have conversion kits, that we have these retrofit kits to turn units into other units based off of injection ranges is very important for me here at Dosatron, because as everybody knows, you may start with one nutrient line and you may switch to another one and you may switch back to the other one, and having that flexibility to replace just an injection stem versus an entire Dosatron does give you the tool to do that. So retrofit kits are a thing. They're available in high flow and in low flow. And essentially all we do is we replace the bottom half of that doser. Thinking back to our piston being our upper half of the doser and our injection stem being that lower half. This is the lower half that we would be replacing there. High flow units. These are the 4 high flow units that are available. And once again, same as with the low flow, that part number, that model number for that unit is going to be very specific to the maintenance kits that need to go to that unit that get paired up with it. Last little recap item here before we move into some real maintenance and what we see with maintenance is seal kits. Now, seal kits are very important to what we are injecting with our Dosatron. And so you see our first one here is Viton seal. Viton seals are going to be compatible with any of your solutions or fertilizers or chemicals that are a 1 to 7 on the pH scale. If we have, say, a pH up or a fertilizer that is high in pH and we are above a 7, we will want to recommend an A-flas seal. And the third seal that we have here is what we call CalRes, which is specific to any PAA products that might be getting injected for cleaning, sanitizing, any of those applications. So when a maintenance kit is ordered or when a maintenance seal is ordered, we want to know specifically, is it Viton, is it A-flas, or is it CalRes? That can be found on the injector itself, or it can be simply found by telling us, what's being injected. Standard material is going to be used for almost all of your solutions out there, besides your pH ups and those types of products. So typically we'll see an A-flas or a Viton. Most of the time we'll see a Viton, and then always CalRes if we're using that for any type of a PAA product. Any questions?
Justin, I don't see anything that's come in through the chat yet, but I just thought that last slide was very, very informative. This kind of information is available. I think you had mentioned on the website, and also available through the Griffin sales team.
Correct. Yeah. Yep. And we've purposely put it in a lot of different areas on the website so that it's kind of, it's out there. It's really out there because we want what will happen essentially is if we use a Viton seal and we're injecting a high pH product, that seal is going to wear out quicker than it would with that A-flask seal. And so it's just important for us to always remember when we're specifying those that we get the correct seal in there to give it the longest period of use between its next service.
Okay, great. A question just came in, and you might be getting into it, but if you're not, it's just simply how many dosatrons can be put in a row?
Yeah, that's a great question, actually. So eight dosatrons in a row. That does not include editrons. And so if we looked at a system setup and we had 8 dosatrons and we needed something else and we could use an editron, editrons do not affect that number. And so we can go a little bit more on the injection side as far as inputs go if we can do it with a microdoser. But 8 will be the max before we start seeing fluctuations in the PSI, which can affect the performance of how that's getting blended.
Okay. Yeah, questions are coming in right now. So there's a lot of information being exchanged. And let's see, Justin, here. When using an injector and a bucket for uptake, what is the best way to place the injector for uptake of the lower volumes? I'm wondering if
Okay. Yeah, no, I think I know what that means. So if you have say you have a 50-gallon solution tanker or stock tank, and
Yep.
you start getting down to maybe 10 gallons
Probably.
left in there. Yeah. So it's always recommended to keep that suction hose and filter about 1/4 of an inch to a 1/2 an inch off the bottom of that tank.
Okay.
And so what that's going to prevent, even though there is a filter at the end of that suction hose, it's going to prevent that filter from getting clogged and then affecting how much is being sucked in there. So, 1/4 inch above the bottom, not laying completely flat against the bottom of the tank.
Great. Thanks. I think, yeah, I think we've got that one answered. The next one I think I probably need some clarification on, but Justin, I'll read it and maybe you can do some interpreting just like you did on the last. And what products do you recommend putting mixing chamber in between? I'm wondering if there's a missing word in there.
Yeah, it's probably I'm assuming they're asking when do you have to have a mixing chamber and when are you kind of able to get
Yes.
away
Yeah,
from.
that's it.
Yeah,
That's it.
yeah, for sure. So we will typically recommend that you put a mixing chamber between each injector, but we all know because of amount of space on a wall, cost, that kind of thing, that if we can not have them between them, can we do that? And you can. When mixing chambers should be absolutely installed is after silicates, which will come first in the system. After any products that are heavy in nitrate, such as CalMag products, between your A and B base solutions, before any kind of inline monitoring, so pH or EC monitoring, and then after all Editron injectors. That's kind of our rule of thumb of, you should put a mixing chamber here, or you could deal with some fallout or some issues. And so that's when we'll recommend it.
Okay, great. And then one more, can you use dosatrons on smaller grows?
You can.
Yep.
Yes. So when we looked back at the low flow dosatron systems or the low flow series, we saw that there are 2 to 10 gallons per minute. When you get into some smaller micro grows, you may not have 2 gallons per minute on your irrigation. That's completely fine. What we would then do is use the dosatrons to perform all your mixing and fill a batch tank that is then pumped to the irrigation system. Essentially, what we have done is we have a source, which is our fresh water, and a destination, which is our batch tank. Then our batch tank becomes another additional source, and our plants become the destination. We've eliminated the need to follow the 2 to 10 gallon per minute rate, because now we're filling a batch tank and it's going to be filling at that within that range.
Okay, great. Thanks, Justin.
Yeah, I think I just saw another one come in here. Question, not so specific to maintenance, but general setup question. What are the pros and cons to a batch tank setup for each grow room, say 4-room grow versus having a direct feed system running a veg and flower? So the benefits to having a batch tank in a, say, a 4-room grow where we have 3 flower rooms and 1 veg room is that we can use one system to fill a batch tank dedicated to our flower recipe. Now, if we have multiple flower recipes, what we then do is we do a recipe dedicated system. We give each one of those batch tanks access to each flower recipe, and then the room has access to that specific batch tank. So we can say flower room 1 has a batch tank, and we'll call it flower room 1 batch tank, has access to each flower recipe, and we can fill it with which flower recipe we need at that time in the growth cycle. That essentially eliminates the need for having multiple systems dedicated to multiple rooms. Now we just have multiple batch tanks dedicated to each recipe. I hope that kind of answers the question a little bit.
I think it does. Yeah, thanks. And that clears up the chat for right now, Justin.
Great. All right. Well, let's talk about maintenance and how to find it and all the good resources that we have for that. So something new that has just been released. It came out in June. All your units have QR codes on them. They've been putting QR codes on units for probably the last 10 years. But when you scan that QR code, it was an error. It didn't take you to a landing page. Starting this year in June, now when you scan that QR code, it takes you to a landing page for your specific unit. And what I mean by that is if you scan it and it's a D14MZ2 with a Viton seal and a bypass and it was a hydro unit, it's going to take you to that exact unit. What it's going to give you there when you go to that landing page is you're going to get the model number, which is going to tell you what your unit is. It's going to give you a serial number. Serial numbers are used as date codes. Essentially, you can see about when your product was produced or when it was produced, but it gives you kind of an inclination as to when that unit was installed, how old that unit might be, because you may not be the person that bought the dosatron. You might come into a facility where they're using dosatron, and you want to know, how old is this unit? Has maintenance been done on it? What information can I get? So that serial number is going to kind of give you that, that inclination. I was like, how old this unit might be when it was maybe installed. And that can lead you to what type of maintenance maybe needs to be performed on that unit. It'll also give you a bunch of links. So quick start guide, which is essentially how to set up a unit, what parts and pieces go with it, how to adjust the dosatron, PSI ratings, flow ratings, all that good stuff, injection rates. It'll also take you to probably the most important part, which is a parts diagram. And that's an interactive part schematic. And what that's going to show you, I'll pause the video here once it gets over there, is the interactive schematic is going to give you every single piece that's in that dosatron It's also going to give you the levels of maintenance that are available for that dosatron. So if we look at it here, you've got unit specifications. We know what our PSI rating is on that unit. We also know what the suggested maintenance kits are for that unit, and it'll give you part numbers on those as well. If you scroll down from there, you would have bell housing part number, you would have body part number, bracket, suction hose, plunger. Every piece that's available to be replaced on that unit is going to be in that interactive schematic. The last piece is going to be an owner's manual, kind of the do's and don'ts with the dosatron. What's the highest temperature I can put into a dosatron? What is, the recommended length for a suction hose? What does a 30 clicks in a minute mean? It'll just kind of give you some real basic information specific to that unit on how to operate it. So very cool. I recommend, if you have dosatrons, scan the QR code, go to that landing page, play around a little bit, check it out. It's very cool, very informative. So I go to my landing page, I can select maintenance. What I'll be directed to is another web page that's going to ask me, what kind of maintenance are you looking to do? Are you looking to do some basic maintenance, maybe 6 to 9 months? Are you looking to do maybe a little bit higher of a maintenance kit, possibly 9 to 16 months? Or are you looking to do a full rebuild? Maybe these units have been installed and they've never been maintained, or you don't know that they've been maintained, and you want to just rebuild the top piston assembly, everything that's really a wear part inside of there. So I've already put everything new in there. I'm going to start running it again as a new unit. A basic maintenance kit is usually recommended once a year, 6 to 9 months, depending on use. I will say that depending on use is kind of, how often are you cleaning it? How often are you using it? What kind of fertilizers are you putting through there? Is it a heavy organic or is it a soluble fertilizer? That all plays a factor, but we've narrowed that down to being about every 6 to 9 months doing what we call a mini maintenance kit. So if you remember, down in that injection stem, we had the syringe and the plunger and the check valve. Every time it clicks, that plunger is moving up and down, that check valve is opening and closing. And so what comes with that kit would be a plunger seal to go on the outside of the plunger there, and then the top guide assembly for the check valve itself. These are ones that we see wear down the quickest, therefore they need to be replaced the soonest. If you miss that 9-month mark, it's not a big deal. You can kind of push that a little further. Say your EC is staying relatively consistent, pH is staying great. You're not seeing any differentiations there. You can go ahead and let that thing keep working for you. And then at about 12 months or 12 to 16, with that depending on use, you'll want to do what we call a seal kit. And a seal kit is going to give you the entire check valve assembly. It's going to give you a plunger seal. It's going to give you an injection stem O-ring and an injection sleeve O-ring. So we've taken that check valve a step further. We're now just going to put in a brand new check valve assembly. We're still going to do our plunger seal, and then we're going to replace a couple of the O-rings that are up here in that injection stem. When we get to about 3 to 5 years, with a good maintenance SOP, 5 years is easily doable on the rebuild kit. So if you're taking the units off post-harvest and cleaning them down with, 1-to-1 vinegar and a little bit of dish soap, and you're, removing the hoses and you're flushing them out and you're keeping those things nice and maintained, it is easily feasible to go that 5 years. But between that 3 and 5 year mark, you're going to want to do a full rebuild kit. So we see here with that full rebuild kit comes the seal kit, our check valve, our plunger seal, our injection sleeve O-ring, and our injection stem O-ring. But now we're going to replace some of the wear parts up in the upper half of that dosatron. And so you're going to get your piston flanges. You're going to get a push rod seal. You're going to get an omega spring, and you're going to get the connecting rod that holds that omega spring in there. These are the parts that you'll want to replace at that timeline in order to keep that vacuum seal going inside of that bell housing, which is then creating that proportionate dose. And so if you see these start to wear down, what you'll start to see is that that proportional dose is getting affected. Key signs to knowing when maintenance is maybe needed is obviously if you are seeing your EC or your pH fluctuating. 1 week it was perfect. The next week it's maybe down a little bit. The week after it's going down even more. When you start to see those kind of fluctuations, it is definitely recommended to start looking at some maintenance kits. One of the 3 kits specifically here, and depending on the last service of that unit, you got a good inclination of which one to go for. Important to note and important to keep in mind is that having these seal kits on hand prior to needing to do the service is invaluable. If your dosatron system is down for 3, 4, 5 days while you get all the necessary kits ordered, it can cause more damage than if you just go ahead and have those seal kits or those rebuild kits on hand. A dosatron, say, goes down, you're able to replace it, everything's good, you're back up and running, and now you just reorder that rebuild kit again, and that way you've got it ready for the next time you need to do service. It's not done enough, and when I see that happen, guys are losing sleep because they're not sure if what they're sending is what they want to send, or they completely shut the dosatron system down, and now they're spending a whole weekend hand mixing tanks or doing doing their own fertigation instead of letting the dosatron do what it was there to do. So in my mind, having a seal kit for each one of your units just on hand is invaluable.
Pretty cheap insurance.
Yes, very cheap insurance for sure. So benefits to performing the maintenance, obviously keeping your doser consistent, injecting what you have it set to, and the accuracy at which it's doing that. Less downtime of the dosing system, effects on crop performance. It's less expensive to perform your maintenance kits than replace dosers. A dosatron system is a large investment. And so with a large investment, taking care of that investment is a very important factor. Scheduling the maintenance, coming up with some type of a maintenance SOP. It could be a, chintzy little spreadsheet that you have below each dosatron or on a wall near the dosatron systems, and you say, I've got these units, here's the serial numbers, here's the model numbers, and when was the last time a seal kit was done? When was the last time a rebuild kit was done? Who did it? Marking it off just keeps you on that timetable where you don't find yourself where you could have done a seal kit, now you're doing a rebuild kit because damage has occurred to the dosatron, or it's past its seal kit. It's now got to be a rebuild kit. So I'll take any other questions here before I hand it off to Greg, if anybody has anything else.
Let me see, Justin, if anything else has come in. And let me check in with Rebecca on the Q&A.
All good, no open questions.
I think we're great. Justin, that was really informative. Again, it really comes down to being proactive about understanding what it is that you're looking for and some of the things that that can kind of indicate that you've got problems. It really is about, you know, what it takes to keep everybody clicking out there. So thank you. A lot of great information. I did want to touch on this slide. Thanks for sharing. This is certainly a little commercial about Griffin. There could be some people on the call here on the webinar that maybe it's the first time that that they've joined one of these webinars by Griffin. Our CEA division, we have 15 warehouses across the country, and we're servicing a nationwide footprint. We're independently owned. This is our 76th year in business, and we really try to focus on providing reliable service and bringing information and being a problem solver and remaining focused on collaborative success. These webinars, I think, are a great example of that. There's our contact information. We've got a really strong staff out in the field of Griffin sales teams that that really focus on the CEA customer. So feel free to reach out to our website or the phone number there on the screen and connect with Griffin. With that being said, thank you for attending. We really appreciate you devoting some time to attend the webinar and to connect at a higher level with Griffin and with its suppliers. So thank you, everyone, for attending. We're glad you were here.
Yeah, thank you, everybody.